Well, another charge, the ideals for the Church of Christ, I'm going to have to back up. The ideals for the Church of Christ came out of the early 19th century Restoration movement. Folks, that is false. The ideals for the Church of Christ, mentioned in Romans 16:16, mentioned in Acts chapter 20, verse 28, mentioned in Mark chapter 16, verse 18, mentioned all through the Old Testament prophets as they prophesied the coming of the kingdom, the coming church, preached of by Jesus and John the Baptist, the kingdom of heaven is at hand. The ideals for the Church of Christ come out of the Bible, folks. Not from any movement started by any men. And again, we'll go on to the next claim, that the Campbells are the founders of the Church of Christ. Well, now we've had callers on the program that have called and tried to make the point that the Church of Christ originated with the Campbells. Thomas Campbell and then Alexander Campbell, his son, are the founders of the Church of Christ. And I just simply ask the question, show me one doctrine that we hold to today that originated with Thomas or Alexander Campbell or any other man. Show us one doctrine that we hold to that originated with these guys. Because if they are the founders of the Church of Christ, as the accusation is made, if they are the founders, then that means we're holding to their doctrine. Like Mary Baker Eddy created doctrines, like Ellen G. White created doctrines, like Joseph Smith created doctrines. And people hold to those doctrines that originated with them. And so they are the founders of those religious movements. John Wesley and many others founded their own religious movements based on their own ideas, their own doctrines. Well, show us what doctrines of Alexander or Thomas Campbell that we hold to that is not originated in Scripture. Not with them, in Scripture. Folks, there is no such thing. And I say it all the time, and I want to say it as forcefully as I possibly can. There is no such thing as Church of Christ doctrine. No such thing. The Church of Christ is the Church of Christ because the Church of Christ follows biblical doctrine. And any group of people that are following biblical doctrine without addition, without subtraction, is the Church of Christ. Now, if that's the case, then how is it that Alexander and Thomas Campbell are the founders? It has to be demonstrated that we are holding to doctrines that originated with them. Now, I'm not saying that Thomas Campbell and Alexander Campbell, more specifically Alexander Campbell, that they didn't found any denominations, because they did. They founded the Christian church denomination. But they didn't found the Church of Christ. The Church of Christ was founded or established in AD 30 in Acts chapter 2 and has existed ever since. What they did was to realize the error of denominationalism and to abandon denominationalism for a return to true New Testament Christianity. They didn't found the Church of Christ. Now, the later departures, which we'll see in just a moment, is another accusation that is made. The later departures of the Christian church and the disciples of Christ came about, and they were involved in, or Alexander was anyway, later in his life, very late in his life, he was involved in those departures. And so the Christian church and later the disciples of Christ originated in the same way the Catholic Church did. They departed from the true New Testament church. The Catholic Church departed, was the result of an apostasy, a departure from the true New Testament church. Well, it's the same thing with the Christian church and with the disciples of Christ. They are the result of apostasy or departures from true New Testament Christianity. And so, they're not founders of the Church of Christ. Well, and that comes to the next accusation, that the disciples of Christ and the Christian church are the same thing as the Church of Christ. Folks, that is not true. That is a false charge. The Christian church and the Church of Christ is not the same thing. And I don't care what North Danville Church of Christ calls themselves, they are the Christian church. They're not the Church of Christ. Because they have doctrines that originated with men, specifically mechanical instruments of music and missionary societies. They're not the Church of Christ. I don't care what name they put on the sign, they're not the Church of Christ. And so, to include the Christian church and the disciples of Christ, which of their own admission, you can look up the disciples of Christ, and of their own admission, they're the most liberal denomination known today. They're not the Church of Christ. And yet this guy, at Lion and Lamb, he includes disciples of Christ and Christian church with the Church of Christ. Says they're all the same thing. Folks, that's not true. We do not claim fellowship with the Christian church. We do not claim fellowship with the disciples of Christ. Because they are the result of departures from true New Testament Christianity. And so, well, that should tell you right there that his examination of the Church of Christ is not honest. It is intellectually dishonest, because he knows that. He knows that the disciples of Christ and the Christian church and the Church of Christ are not all the same thing, but yet he's lumping them all together. That is dishonest. He's not being honest. And we would like for him to come on the air with us and to answer that, to show us why he would say that those three groups are one and the same when they are not. The Church of Christ is the result of Christ establishing His church, building His church, Matthew chapter 16, where the disciples of Christ and the Christian church are the results of departures from the New Testament church. Just like the Catholic Church is the result of a departure from the New Testament church, which was prophesied in Scripture. And so, we would like to have that answered for us live on the air. Wouldn't you like to have them come on and answer that? Go to the website, post on there that you would very much like to have them come on the air live with us and answer this. Why did they say that when that is very blatantly false? Okay? Well, let's look on at some other things.